Warning, this video about Dungeons & Dragons assumes that you have played the game before. You functionally know how the game works, and you have done a job of rolling dice, playing with your friends, or at the very least, have seen people play before, and you think you have enough understanding and the will and drive to run a game of Dungeons & Dragons. Stick with us. Welcome to Dungeons & Dinner Theater, our second installment, Tips for the First-Time Dungeon Master. All right, my Dungeon Masters-to-be, you have gathered your friends for a game of Dungeons & Dragons on game night. You have the date, the time, the table, and now you're ready to run. But the thing is, you're not ready to run. What am I going to do? Oh my God, I have to entertain my friends. They have their characters all fleshed out. You're running around like a chicken without a head. I'm here to help. Going to give you guys 4 basic categories of tips, and then we're going to weave it all together. I'm going to show you what preparation you can do. You could copy me word for word, and your first adventure is going to be a good one. The first of our tips: resist the grandiose lore. As a dungeon master, I understand the compulsion to weave a grandiose story. You know, you have the whole past 100 years written out word for word, and you want to info dump it on your players so that they know the importance of the world around them. We want you to resist that urge, because Dungeons & Dragons is a collaborative storytelling game. You're here to make a story, here to be heroes with your friends around you at the table. The story's about them. The cinematic lens focuses in on the actions of the characters and how it influences the world, not about the last 20 years and the king and queen and royals before them. Perhaps it's relevant later, but it's much better to show than to tell. Best practice for starting a game: start with how and if the players know each other. They're all prominent features of the storyline going on. It's important that they know the people that they're going to be fighting with, where they are, and why. Speaking of the why are they together? Dungeons & Dragons is a story-driven game, and no story is complete without conflict. Without conflict, a story will not go forward. There will be no reason for a group of adventurers to go save somebody if there's no one to save. If the world is safe, then there's no need for adventure. Kaput, no game. So, you have to figure out what is drawing your players out of their hidey holes, what is going to bring them out and fight together. To fight together, in fact. Speaking of people to save, we're going to move on to our second tip. Who are your NPCs, your non-player characters in the world? What do they want? This is an important question to ask yourself. Think of the important people inside of your world, the ones that drive the conflict, the people that you need to save, the people that are causing distress, that are causing the conflict, are villains. Why are they evil? Are they even evil? And what do they do that would cause your players distress? Who do they target? Who is someone that is important to protect for your players? Why are they worth protecting? Knowing what the NPCs, your villains, your important characters in your story, knowing what they want is very important. It'll help you decide what they do in response to your characters' actions and why they do these things, so it makes cohesive sense for your story. Last piece of advice in regards to your non-player characters. Always have, even on a side of scrap paper, a list of random names of people, locations, and even random objects can help stir the imagination and help you make up names on the fly, because your characters will inevitably ask for the names of people you didn't even think twice about for your story. So that'll be useful. My next rally of advice revolves around the question, how much is too much preparation for your next game? It's easy to overwhelm yourself trying to plan the next 10 sessions ahead when your characters are still in the tavern, so to speak. You have to plan out the things that you know are going to happen. You have to lay the tracks right in front of the train. You can't be concerned with what the big bad evil guy is doing and how the boss fight is going to go if you don't know how the players are going to get there. Only the immediate relevant information is important to express to your characters so that they can make the choice in which directions that they want to go. That leads me to my next point. Try not to plan out the things that the players are going to do or decide. The fun part of the game is that they have an infinite amount of options that they can choose from. They can go in any direction that they want. You planning exactly what the results of a conflict are going to be will only leave you unprepared for what to do next, because your players will always throw you a curveball. Instead of predicting the things that they are going to do in a relevant encounter or conflict, lay out an if-then chart. If the characters do nothing, then what happens? If they win the encounter with whatever you throw at them, let's say a horde of goblins stealing from a village, then what do they take? What were the goblins trying to go after? You know, these kinds of questions. It is always important to know what happens if your players do nothing, because they very well might not be invested in whatever plot hook you lay in front of them. They don't care about the blacksmith's daughter that's been stolen or whatever. You know, it has no concern to them. They have bigger fish to fry, and so ignore it. Well, maybe the next time that they go to the blacksmith looking for repaired armor and weapons, they turn a cold shoulder for the adventurers that didn't help save their little girl. Hey, their actions have consequences. You can't force them to do anything, but the world goes on. If it's a living, breathing place, then it's going to continue right along whether the characters act or whether they don't. And that is why their decisions are important, because it affects the world around them. Something that may be useful for you to prepare for your incoming game is a visual representation of something that the players come across. Maybe if in the treasure that they take off of a bandit, they find a vial of poison or a potion, maybe you bring a small vial and fill it with liquid to serve as a representative. Even that little gesture can really make a difference in regards to what the characters see in their mind's eye. For example, if your villains are coming and burning down the crops, it may be useful to lay down little fire markers in front of the players as you're describing the screams and desperation to put out this winter's crop. Another resource that might be useful in your Dungeons & Dragons game is visual representation for combat. You can describe an incoming horde of goblins and your players bashing towards them, but once you roll that initiative and it's squared up who's going first and next, it can be a little bit confusing describing all of these things. Sometimes it can be useful to have a grid, little representations of where your characters are and where the villains are in kind, so that they know how far they can move, what actions they have available to them, and if they're close enough to strike down the bad guys. You don't need to go too fancy with this. As you see here, you can even pilfer game pieces from board games, chess sets, things like that. You can craft your own bits. You can make the enemies be M&Ms, and when a player defeats them, just delicious. All of these things are optional. Combat can be done in theater of the mind, your description and the players working out with you based on your description what they do. But never hurts to have a little visual aspects on the table. Now that I have my tips laid out bare for you, I'm going to weave them all together and craft a small storyline for you to run for your friends for your first dungeon mastering experience. come on over and I'll show you how we can get this done on 1 page or less. The first thing I do with my page is separate it into 4 parts so that I can differentiate my notes. First up is the conflict. The royalty that the players serve under is being overthrown. They awake at night to screams and combat. The first thing after dressing, the players find the queen of the castle. Ask the players their name and visual description to get them into the mood of their characters. The players are tasked with keeping the queen safe and transporting her to a safe place. Next up, the ambush. On the way to that safe location, the players encounter a small, scaled, little dragony humanoid creature pinned under a stone. This is a decoy to try to catch the players unaware. Roll initiative. These are the creatures that stage the coup. They are after the queen and will try to poison her. Next up are some notes and motives on our characters thus far. Those little creatures are kobolds, little dragonoid beings sent by an actual dragon to throw the kingdom into chaos so that that dragon can come, swoop in, and take over. The ambush itself will occur after the queen is evacuated on the way to her cousin's dukedom, a place of safety nearby. After the initial encounter with the kobolds in the ambush, the queen will appear to be poisoned. After a few days, it'll come about that she is a spy. One of your characters is going to witness her talking to one of those kobolds and planning for their next move in overthrowing the kingdom. This would be a great place to end your session on a high, tense note. With these easy notes and props in mind, the beginning introduction of your session could easily sound something like this. Welcome everybody to our game of Dungeons and Dragons here today. Your characters find yourselves in the service under the Queen Rictala of the Opaline Blood. Let's go around the table and talk a little bit about our characters. Give me their name, their description, and how they came into the service of this royalty. You let the players speak, explain a little bit about themselves, and then tell them the situation they find themselves in. You all find yourselves in your quarters in the castle. Your sleep is interrupted by the sounds of clattering, sounding of screams, tussles, weapons hitting armor, and the cries of people being slain. You all rush to get your equipment onto yourselves, and the first thing that you find as you leave is each other and the Queen Rictala herself. Along your journey and converging on this point, you find bodies slashed open. Some have the evidence of poison dribble coming out of their mouths, the look of fear and pain in their last moments. It is relevant, it is very clear that you must get your queen to safety as soon as possible. Battles are still ringing out down the hallways, but your queen is here, the exit route is secured, and you all make it out safely. Or maybe they don't. Perhaps you would have them roll for stealth to get out of there quietly. Maybe you tell them to roll perception to see what they hear, see if they can make it out alive with the queen in hand. Once you get over the stage fright and have a decent idea of what's going to be going on for the session, running your game of Dungeons and Dragons will be a very fulfilling experience. I can attest, I've been doing it for years and years now, failing forwards. Thank you guys for joining me here at DN Dinner Theater. It has been an honor and pleasure to serve. Until next time.